All right, hello and welcome to the Ohio Local History Alliance Summer Webinar, Rethinking Your Open Hours. I am Betsy Hedler. I serve the Ohio Local History Alliance as Executive Secretary, and I will run your Zoom this evening. So we are recording this event. It will be available for viewing afterwards on the Alliance's YouTube page, and also there will be a link from the training page on our website. We encourage you to check out the training page on our website as it has some great webinars from years past, such as similar things. Please go ahead and use the chat to report any technical issues you may be having to the event host. That would be me. If you are having audio or visual issues, often the easiest way to fix those is to leave the webinar. It's not a webinar, it's a meeting, and come back in. So leave, come back, and that will typically fix your audio issues. And otherwise, please go ahead and message me in the chat and we'll see what we can do. Please also use the chat for asking questions of our presenters or for sharing comments and resources with each other. We do not need you to hold your questions till the end. However, the presenters will be waiting until the end to actually address questions. So go ahead and put them in the chat as you think of them, but we will be coming to questions at the end rather than throughout the presentation. And that is what I had. We will ask you to remain muted just to make all of the audio less confusing along the way. And I will start by introducing Kate LaLonde, who I believe is going first. Kate is the director of the Worthington Historical Society and also a Region 6 representative for the Ohio Local History Alliance.
Thanks, Betsy. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. All right, so yeah, again, my name is Kate LaLonde. I'm the director of the Worthington Historical Society. And today I'll be joined by Christina and John, who are also regional representatives for the Ohio Local History Alliance, and talking about rethinking open hours. As the past 2 years, a lot of our sites were forced to make different arrangements for being open during the pandemic and how we operated. I kind of looked at it as an exciting time to be able to make changes that maybe we thought about doing, but now we had to. So in our case at the Worthington Historical Society, let's see, there we go. I'm going to chat just a little bit. We have a historic house museum, the Orange Johnson House. And in the past, we've always operated with standard open hours. This year, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the house being open as a museum. And pretty much over those 50 years, we've been open on Sundays for a period of time from April to November. And then we do holiday open houses in December. And everyone was comfortable with having us be open 3 hours on a Sunday. We would have 2 volunteers available to do tours. And, you know, there are a few pros to doing our tours like that. It was definitely simple to communicate in printed materials what our open hours are. And guests didn't have to plan a trip to our museum in advance. They could just stop in anytime in those hours. There are also some cons to the drop-in hours, some of which were that staff and volunteers were unable to anticipate the number of guests that were coming ahead of time, meaning that sometimes if 4 families came every 10 minutes and we have 2 docents, they'd have to figure out how to join up in tours in mid-progress and figure out how to catch them up or swing back around to the part of the tour they missed. That could be complicated. But also on the flip side, some days we didn't have any guests if there were big events or depending on the weather or, you know, any reason you can imagine. And then that's also frustrating for our volunteers to sign up to come devote their Sunday afternoon and not have guests. And then another stumbling block that became more difficult as time passed is our museum is just a house museum and we don't have internet. So we couldn't accept credit cards at the location. And so we required guests to pay with cash or check, which put our docents in sometimes a tricky situation of should they tour someone who doesn't have cash or check, or send them to get cash and they never come back, things like that. So these were all things that we were considering, or we've been wrangling with. And then with the pandemic, we had to decide, what it was a good time to decide what our other options were. So here, I'm going to turn it over to John, who's going to chat for a little bit.
Okay, my name is John Swearingen, and can you hear me? Everybody hear me? Okay, and I am at the Museum of Fulton County and way up at the top of Ohio near the Michigan line. And we're a very small organization. We have several historic buildings and a museum that we're open 7 days a week, which is fine for the big museum, but not so much for our little sites. So we want to help our guests see the other buildings, and our Heritage Alliance partners, which are 7 other museums in the county, having similar problems. So my first question here is about how customers can book a tour without calling the museum, because that's traditionally what we've always done on our website and on our literature, saying we're not open regular hours, but call the museum. So we're trying to think of creative ways to reach people without having that traditional phone call having to be made. That sometimes it turns people off. How do I change the screen? How do I change my screen? Okay. So this is not a real survey question that I'm asking you to vote on, but I want you to think like it is. Does your nonprofit institution have any unpaid employees? Yes or no? So some of you out there do, and some of you don't. But it will make a difference on how you go on to the next step of this. So no matter whether you have a paid employee or a volunteer, you're going to need someone to play the part of the operations manager. And this is the person that schedules tours, takes reservations, and handles making sure that there's a tour guide there on the day of the trip. And then you usually have a volunteer docent, which is not necessarily the same person, or you have a paid docent. But I'm guessing most of you have a volunteer docent. And this lady in the photograph here is an art museum volunteer docent. I just want to make a note here in this, that when you're giving tours, you really shouldn't be left alone with strangers. So I would never take an 80-year-old volunteer, give her a key to the museum and say, you've got a tour of 12 unknown people from Michigan coming in at noon, and then have her get there and be mugged by somebody that was setting her up. So I really think you all need to make sure that there's 2 people when you do a tour like this, where you're selling tickets. And then my next question is, does your nonprofit institution have a business email? Now, this seems silly to some people, but I think a lot of groups don't have a business email. So ours is info@museumofFultoncounty.org, and that is done through Gmail. And so I really, really strongly suggest that you don't have one person in your historical society be the email for your site. People go on the board, people go off the board, people change, people quit, and you've already got Mary's phone number and email on all your brochures to call when somebody wants to make a reservation. So this is something you can do easily. It's free, and you go into Gmail. This is what we use. You don't have to use Gmail, but in Gmail, we created an account just for the museum. And then in the settings, you can hook up your email, the person that's going to be the manager, their email into the museum email. So every time the museum gets an email, it'll pop up on your email. So if I'm on my phone and I see there's an email coming in, I'll see that, oh, someone's just texted me about setting up a tour at the museum. So your private email and your museum email can be merged together. And this is just the settings. I wanted to show you the process of doing that. So what happens is you get a notice in your email when someone has booked a tour, or you will get then the customer on the other end will get information back from you on what your time of your tour is. And if you are selling tickets, they'll get a receipt. And that's what they'll use as their ticket when they come to their event. We stopped a long time ago having paper tickets that we mail to people for events and tours. We just have them bring in their email that has a confirmation of their tour ticket. Oop, shoot, how do I go back? Okay, electronic calendar. This is another thing that people don't do in museums and small groups, historical societies. Everybody has jobs to do at your museum. Everybody has tours to do. They have events coming up, and you want to make sure everybody on your board and everybody that's a volunteer knows what's going on. So if you don't have one, which my question here, if you say no to this question, this is an example of our museum Gmail calendar. And we have, you can look on my left there, I have my personal calendar can be shown, my contacts can be shown. Right now, what I have up for you to see is my worker schedule and my museum calendar. So the calendar shows the events coming up, and the worker schedule tells me who's going to be at the museum that day. So if you're not open every day, you can still use this kind of calendar. And so where I say John here, that means John is available to give a tour that day. So if I'm booking a tour, I can look at this calendar and I can say, oh, John's on the list for giving tours on Monday. So I'll tell John that someone just bought tickets for that day for his tour. All right, so I'm going to stop now, and we're going to switch to Christina, and she is going to take you into the world, since we're in Gmail, into the world of making a reservation through Gmail.
Okay, John, go ahead and stop sharing.
All right, there we go.
There you go. All right, so hi everyone. My name is Christina Hartleib, and I'm the director at the Harriet Beecher Stowe House down in Cincinnati. So the other end of the state from John. But so I'm going to talk a little bit more about how some of these things work and how we continued, or how we started rethinking open hours particularly during the pandemic, and how that's transitioned to today. So, of course, first I like to talk a little bit about Harriet. So Harriet lived in Cincinnati, was able to use her power of voice to change public opinion by writing the most important anti-slavery book ever. That's kind of our ultimate theme at the Harriet Beecher Stowe House, is that idea of the power of voice. We're a historic house. I don't call us a house museum because we don't have all that, like, stuff. We don't have the dining room set up, and we don't have the parlor set up and so forth. We do a lot of different interpretation, but we don't have any of Harriet's stuff. Nobody kept any of her stuff because her family lived there so long ago. And then they moved to a different house, and then she became famous. So, but we also carry on a lot of the legacy that transforms this power of voice idea as well. The Lane Theological Seminary is where her dad worked. That's why they moved to Cincinnati. And that is the house itself was part of the seminary. The later history of the house, the same space was an African-American boarding house and a tavern that was listed in the Green Motorist book. So we continue that power of voice legacy throughout time. And right now we are undergoing a major restoration effort in conjunction with the Ohio History Connection. So I just have a 1970s restoration picture and then a couple from this past couple months there. Okay, so things that we typically do at the Harriet Beecher Stowe House, we do a lot of different things, which makes it, you know, challenging to get everything on board and everything moving in the right direction when you're scheduling things. So tours and school groups and homeschool families, and we also do workshops for Girl Scouts. We do walking tours of the neighborhood. We do group tours and then different discussions and lectures. I like to say that here we do Black history every day, we do women's history every day, and we really think about ideas of historical literacy. How do we understand the past to make sure that we know why things are the way that they are today? But when we are doing tours by appointment, so initially we always, you know, before the pandemic, we were open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 10 to 4, and Sundays, 12 to 4. And I will reiterate a couple of things that John mentioned, and that is, you know, we have volunteer docents who come in for those tour times. They're scheduled for shifts, and you would never have one docent by themselves. You want to have at least 2 docents who are volunteers, or at least 1 docent and 1 staff member. Make sure that you do have that safety component going on. But so when the pandemic started, we were closed down for a couple months, and then we wanted to offer tours by appointment. And the way that we decided to do that was a very cheap, economical way to do it. It takes a little bit of time, but I'm going to kind of walk you through it in terms of how we were able to do that tours by appointment scheduling. And basically, we just set up a Google form. And this is an example, a picture of what our Google form looks like. Oops, sorry. It's morphed a little bit, but this is basically what it looks like. It collects the person's name, email, phone number, when they want something requested. But then someone needed that house operations manager, had to check it daily. Then they entered the information onto our Google Calendar, sent out an email confirmation, and then scheduled a volunteer docent or staff, 2 people to be there while the tour was going on. So it was very economical in terms of it didn't cost us anything to do this, but it did take some people power to be able to manage the tours by appointment schedule. And then I found that if you didn't send them a reminder the day before, then they might be a no-show. So that's always, like one more step, remember you have an appointment at such and such time tomorrow. So that's kind of the linear steps that we used in order to be able to schedule tours by appointment through this Google form. And then we transferred that information onto our Google Calendar. And this looks very similar to John's. I just pulled out a couple of examples. So this is what ours looked like last April. And you can see we have, the color coded, that's faded because it's in the past, but the color coded things in terms of the red were scheduled tour appointments, the things in blue were public events, the things in yellow were internal meetings. So we were able to, all of my staff, which I have, I'm the only full-time person, and then I do have 3 part-time people now. And so our staff can look at that and tell what's going on, and we can write notes to each other so that we know who's covering things and so forth. And then this is an example of this month. So, we're continuing to use that Google Calendar to be able to incorporate all of our tour appointments and all of our other meetings and all of our other things that are going on to be able to share with each other. And so that everybody, who's operating the house really has an idea of what's going on each day and knows who's covering things as they come up. So how we continue to use the system, is that we have, we transitioned, quite a while ago, we did transition back into those regular hours. So the Thursday through Saturday, 10 to 4, and the Sundays, 12 to 4. But we're still using that Google form to be able to set up appointments as necessary. So we're setting them up. We may have to go back to it on occasion during the restoration. We're committed to staying open during the restoration, but there might be times when the whole house is not open. So we want to be able to use that as a schedule your specific tour at these hours. We also tend to use it a lot for our group tours or field trip requests. So now you can go into our Google form and, you fill out the form. It looks very similar. You still fill out the same type of information, and we continue to monitor it, but now it's monitored more like 3 to 4 times a week as opposed to daily. And then again, we can enter the information on our Google Calendar, send them email confirmations, request additional information. So all of the setup that we did back in 2020 is still usable, and we use it today, just in a slightly modified version. We have also, in this idea of rethinking your hours, we have also started to come up with some other ideas and projects and programs that go along with tours, but are not, your typical go through the house type tour. So we do specialty tours now that people do book in advance. And there's actually 2 ways that you can book it. Either we set a time, we say, okay, we're going to do our abolitionists and African Americans in Walnut Hills tour on Saturday, June, whatever the date is, at 10 o'clock. And then we get people to buy tickets through Eventbrite. Or we will say to people, if you want to bring your group of 10 people or more, then we can schedule the tour when your group is ready to do it. So again, it's scheduled in advance, but it's an opportunity for them to do different tours that way. And the tours that we have set up in this manner right now are the African American Walking Tour of Walnut Hills, which is our neighborhood here in Cincinnati. We also have a women's suffrage tour that is located, that takes place in downtown Cincinnati. And we started that back in 2020 in the fall when suffrage was on everybody's mind because of the centennial of the 19th Amendment. And then most recently, we have started another tour, specialty tour that's inside the house, but it is our hard hat tour. So it is specific to the restoration effort, and people get to go behind the scenes in terms of looking at what the restoration work currently is. They get to put a hard hat on and go through the basement, which is normally not on the tour, that kind of thing. So for both of those, we do tend to collect money in advance. We do not do that for regular tours. It's never been part of our system of doing that. So when we do specialty tours, though, we do schedule in advance and we do collect money in advance. So John and Kate wanted me to show you a little bit about how that works. Oh, there's our hard hats, but and we do it through Eventbrite. I'm looking for other options, and Kate's going to talk about a system called Fair Harbor that I want to learn more about. But so Eventbrite, so this is like an example of our Eventbrite page where you create an event. These are the list of, we have on here both our tours and then also our lectures and discussion series kinds of things on there as well. So it is a way to collect the money, get the reservations and so forth before the events happen. And then this is when you set up an Eventbrite event, it takes you, it's like a form that you fill out through Eventbrite. It takes you through how to do everything. One of my part-time people is a communications manager. So luckily I have someone who can do all of that. If you can focus one person on doing all of the creation of the Eventbrite or whatever system you use, then that helps because they get, they get good and fast at it. But The other program that we are looking at in terms of ways to rethink your open hours is something that we're tentatively calling Awkward History. And this is a new program, so we don't have any examples yet. We haven't done it yet, but I've got several of my board members and several people from different groups, including I've contacted like the Young Black Professional Association in Cincinnati. And, you know, there's a lot of synergy about it. So it's something that we're going to do. We just haven't done it yet, but it is something that will bring new audiences in. So a new program kind of aimed at young professionals. We're thinking about an evening event so that people can come after work hours, either once a month or maybe every other month, provide some food, some drink, you know, a little beer on the side is always going to be bringing in the young professionals. And it would be a chance for people to learn about, you know, awkward things in history that have to do with what we talk about. We can do some primary and secondary source stuff. We can do trivia nights. We're not sure exactly the format, but some of our general topics that we could be talking about is temperance in a tavern. You know, Lyman Beecher, the original owner of the house, was a temperance guy, and then 100 years later, his house became a tavern. So how does that work, or why did that transition? Or talking about what were the black codes in Ohio. Gee, I thought Ohio was a free state, but I didn't know there were all these laws about what black people could and couldn't do in the 1820s, 30s, 40s. We also have a big scandal in our family. Henry Ward Beecher, Harriet's favorite brother, was involved in an adultery scandal. So that's always a fun topic for young people to talk about. There's also the whole idea of the term Uncle Tom. Most people in the United States don't really understand the term Uncle Tom, because what we think of culturally is not anything the way that the character was written. So, you know, Uncle Tom is a very pejorative insult in the African American community, and yet that's not the way the character was written. It was changed and morphed culturally over the course of the 1800s and into the 20th century. So one idea for this Awkward History program would be to talk specifically about that. And then, you know, old houses, everybody dies in old houses, right? So we can talk about all the people or all of the diseases or all of the wakes that took place in our parlor kind of thing. That might be another fun topic for, fun is not the right word, but you know what I mean. But those are just some examples. So as you're thinking about expanding or rethinking open hours, you can think about programming that is not just your normal house museum or historical society programming, but to do some other things as well. And I think that's it for me. So I'm going to stop sharing. I think it goes back to John now to talk a little bit more. And then again, we will be answering questions at the end.
Okay, so how do you sell tickets before an event or before a tour? So this is new for a lot of people, and this is how we do it. So does your nonprofit institution have a website? Because that is how you sell prepaid tickets. So yes, you can go on to the next step. No, you need to figure out how to get a website. And there's a lot of cheap, easy ways to do that. This is our history manor. And this is what I suggest people have for their front door of every museum. So it says the name of my museum, and then it says time tickets available, has a phone number they can call or our website. And I even put a QR code on there, which will go directly to the reservation portion of our website. So This is really good for the younger generation. They are people that are timid and they don't want to talk to people on the phone. They can just pull their phone out while they're in the car, you know, or walk up to your building and click this and find out that tomorrow there's a tour at 11 o'clock. So this is how we take online tour reservations. I'm not telling you you have to do this, but I just wanted to show you this as an example. Square is, you see a lot of Square cash registers now in businesses and restaurants. And we use it not for our gift shop, but for other parts of the back house event. So there is a nonprofit website that is available through Square. It's $12 a month, and you might think that's expensive, but you got to think about the domain name, the hosting, and all the other things that are involved with setting up a website. So I really don't think this is bad. And then this 2.9% plus 30 cents, that's the traditional charge for any transaction on Square. So there's examples if you go on their website of what your website could look like. This is just an example here with somebody that's selling dog products. This is what we currently use our Square for. On our website, it'll go to the Square page, and the people don't really know it's a Square page because it's embedded into our website. We sell memberships on this. So instead of sending people sending a check through the mail, or you sending them a reminder, you can email them and say it's time to renew your membership, and then they can go online and pay for their membership. They can make a donation to your annual fund through this, and you can sell tickets, which is what we do. This is the back house, the back part of the screen that they don't see, that you see. And then you decide, like she just showed at the Harriet Beecher Stowe, like she's doing a 10, 11, and a 1 o'clock tours. So each one of those tours, you would fill out a form like this and a picture. See, I have a little picture there for we had a scavenger hunt on the right there that we did. And the tickets were $25 a person. What's nice about all this is that it's prepaid, and I don't really care if they show up or not because it's non-refundable. And I don't have to show up at the museum and find out nobody came for their tour. It's prepaid. So it's really good for us. The money in Square goes directly into your bank account. There's no messing around with PayPal or anything like that. You can turn off and on the ticket visibility. So let's say you decide, oh, nobody will work this weekend. I can't get anyone to do the tour on August 5th. So you can click off and on your tours on this screen right here and decide when it's going to show on the website and when it's not going to show on the website. And then this is what your email will get. Your museum email will get this, and it'll say Square has sent you X amount of dollars. And then there's another screen that shows you the name of the people, their email, all their contact information in case you need to get a hold of them. So this is nice for me because I know instantly when someone books a tour on the internet, it pops up on our museum email. And that's it for me. And we're going to switch back now to Kate, and she's going to go through even a more complicated, and not complicated, but higher end way to book a ticket. The problem with Square is you have to go in and physically change when the ticket's no longer able to be sold, you have to pull it off. You can't, it won't just do it automatically. Some programs will have a deadline, and if they don't book their ticket by a certain date, it disappears off the choices. So that's the only bad part of that, is you have to monitor it. Like every Friday before the weekend, you should go in and monitor and see if you need to change tours for the next week. So.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to share about an integrated booking system. Let's see. I can get this to advance here. Okay, so I put on this slide some different online booking softwares that exist. And if you go on and Google some of these, you can see rubrics that compare different pricing schemes and what they allow. I'm just going to talk about Fair Harbor because that's what we've been using at the Worthington Historical Society. I actually encountered it the first time when I was booking a house museum in Michigan, and I loved the experience of booking on their website. And I thought, well, this probably costs way too much for us to use, but was pleasantly surprised to find out that there is no front end cost with Fair Harbor to an organization. All the fees are kind of passed on to the customer like Ticketmaster. So it was a good way to try something new without a lot of front end investment. So Fair Harbor integrates into your organization's website. So I put a little red circle on our website that when you go onto our homepage, there's a book a tour button. And when you click on that button, the pop-up box will appear on the screen with all of our booking options. So here's an example that, we originally were looking into this for just a way to have the Orange Johnson House tours available by appointment during the pandemic. That would help us guarantee that the groups were small and that we would know people were coming ahead of time. It also solves the problem of collecting fees ahead of time. But then kind of like what Christina was mentioning and John was mentioning, we can also now use this for one-time events. Like for example, this coverlet tour is just a one-time tour, and we can put those events into Fair Harbor as well. And we've added a way for people to do guided tours of our doll museum at our other site. So if someone picks the tour they want, like they pick the Orange Johnson House tour, click on it, it'll bring up a calendar of the dates that are available for booking. And so you can see in this example that right now we have tours on Wednesdays and Sundays. And this also gives the flexibility. I wanted to try a weekday because we've never been open on weekdays, just where people can just book on their own. But we could also try evenings, or, we can switch it up as much as we want. And all of our publicity says open by reservation. So we can make those changes as we need to. Then what's really amazing is technical support for Fair Harbor is free and it's available 24/7. So at risk of sounding like a commercial for Fair Harbor, which I'm sure there are other really good integrated booking systems that you can find, but I was pretty amazed that I actually don't have to do any work at all if I don't want to. I can call, once I set up an account with Fair Harbor, again, free of cost, I can just email them what my event title, time, date, cost, and all the information I want associated with that event. And then you give them your website, access to your backend website, and they will integrate it all into your website for you. They'll make changes. They'll do all that for you. So it's kind of amazing. I actually prefer to have the ability to set up the events myself, and it's not simple. It's not as simple as you setting up a Google form. And I think Eventbrite and Square Look may be a little bit easier to set up too, but it just takes it a little bit further. So it does have this step-by-step guide that walks you through, setting up what email gets the confirmation email that gets sent to your guests, what the cancellation notes would be, your item descriptions, uploading photos, deciding if you want an adult, a child, different customer rates, and then it helps you create the availabilities and then turn on booking online. So you can do all of this on your own, or you can just turn it over to their staff. So if you're just going to have one or two events that run all year, maybe you don't even want to learn how the system works, you just email it to them, they'll set it up and it'll be on your website. And as I mentioned, so a fee is added to the ticket price from Fair Harbor at the time of booking. So we pay the credit card fee for if our admission's $5, we'll pay 56 cents or whatever for the credit card fee. But then the guest will end up, in this particular instance, the guest will pay $6 a person. So there was a little bit of hesitancy on our part at our museum from colleagues about, do we want to lose that money? But on the flip side, we're able to offer more availabilities with less work. So hopefully in the long run, we're actually becoming more accessible to more people and gaining on admissions. So that's what the booking screen looks like. We do have tours are free for members. So we do ask them to call and we'll just book it through this platform, because if we can put it in on our end for free, they can't book for free on the website. So some of the pros of using an integrated booking system rather than for us having drop-in guests is they do pay for their booking ahead of time. So our docents no longer have to handle payment on site. They just get a copy of the manifest. There's a button at the top that says manifest, and you can click on the date and print out everybody that is registered and email it to your docent or print it and have it at the site. Cancellation policy indicates no refunds for no-shows. And I was kind of surprised that we've had that happen a few times, but no one's asked for their money back. They just didn't show up. And then the schedule can be changed. You can add new dates, or if something comes up, you're having, the power went out and there's no tours you can already scheduled, you can just block those dates out easily, or close for holidays. And since we just advertise now tours by reservation, all of our printed material is still correct. This is a screenshot, which is a little tiny. It's the same screen at the top and the bottom, but it shows that on the calendar, you can go in on the bookings tab and see by date, our 10-15 tour on June 10th was full. And then our 11:30 tour had 5 spots available. So you can see availabilities on the calendar. And then there is a way, kind of similar to how John was showing the Google Calendar, and Christina as well. On here you can, and I've never done it, but you can go fill out all of your docents and staff and connect names to all the tours. So, and they could have logins too, so they'd be able to log in and see their bookings. Because this site is, works for all different size organizations. So that's what I just mentioned, is that you can, that's kind of an advanced option, adding scheduling staff, but certainly don't have to use that. But some of the things that are a little more difficult is guests who don't want to book or pay online may be turned off by this. So we are considering adding some of those open hours, kind of like the Harriet Beecher Stowe House did, adding some open hours back in at some point. So guests can drop in. They don't have to plan ahead all the time. Although for Fair Harbor, as soon as one guest books a tour, the tour will stay open for registration until it starts. I have it set up so that if nobody registers by midnight the night before, it closes, so that I can let the docents know nobody booked, you're off the hook for the day, or this is how many people. But if otherwise I can say you have 2 people booked, and if other people book right up to the tour, I'll let you know. And then the other con is just someone has to be comfortable working with your booking system, such as Fair Harbor, or willing to work with the staff at the booking system like Fair Harbor to help get the events and information loaded into the website. So that is what I have about that. So I think we can do questions. Do you guys want me to read questions? Does that work? Okay, so the first question is, how are you handling walk-ups? I'm sure many visitors claim that they didn't know they had to sign up ahead of time. I can say we haven't had that issue yet at our museum. But, you know, if there were walk-ups, I think our volunteers would try to accommodate them if there was room, and go back to the old-fashioned, take it the admissions on site, just because everybody wants to be nice and accommodating. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and since we do have the, you know, set hours 4 days a week still, that doesn't usually pose a problem for us, because we are able to accommodate people as they walk up. And, you know, sometimes there's a large group and you just have to, you know, move people through a slightly different way and stuff like that. But yeah, that's not really been a problem per se.
The only time it might be a problem is if you have a museum that has no internet and somebody wants to use a credit card and they just walked up. So I have a hotspot on my phone and I could do a Square transaction on my phone. So that would require someone like me to be there, though, to be able to do that.
I will say I have told our volunteers, and I'm not sure everyone remembers this in the minute, but that we also have a make a donation button on our website. So they could also tell people if they went on their phone, they could pay their admission by just making an appropriate donation. And then just that docent could forward that information onto the office and we would match it up. But let's see.
That's actually a really good idea. And I've done something similar to that in a different situation before, but okay.
So the next question says, if you only offer tours by reservation, how do you deal with your site's Google listing requiring a range of open hours? We find that many visitors trust the Google listing as fact and may stop there and never visit the museum website. That's a really good point. I should be more observant to what our Google listing says because I'm not even sure what ours says. So that's a good point that everyone should check out. I don't know if John or Christina have any insight into that.
I feel like when we were open for tour, when we were just open by appointment, we were able to put that on the Google listing somewhere, but I don't remember how exactly we did it. So when you go into your own Google listing, kind of, you know, finagle with, try to see what it says in terms of, you know, how you can, or it could be, or there might be a thing that says like hours vary or something like that. So just play with the Google listing to see how you can make it more obvious that it's not specific hours.
Like the day she's open on Wednesdays, she could say technically she's open from 10 to 3 by reservation.
Right.
I have a lot of problems with Google listings in general. They put our pins on the wrong addresses and put our phone number on historic buildings that we don't own. So now as a visitor, I would never trust a Google listing, but I can see how that would be an issue. Okay. And I don't see any other questions right now. So if anyone has any other questions, feel free to pop them in there.
Go ahead and write them down, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question yourself, that's fine too. All right, so let me ask a question. Have people found this helpful or useful? You can use the little reaction buttons down at the bottom if you would like to. So at the bottom, you can either do a thumbs up or a sad face if you didn't think this was helpful. How's that? All right, we've got some people weighing in. Thank you. Thank you. how about Betsy? Do you have any questions or things that you have thought of as we have been presenting that people might be curious or concerned about, or things that you think of in terms of what members might be interested in knowing more about?
This is honestly one of those moments I miss Andy Verhoff, who always has a question. I am the person who never has a question is the problem. Although I am looking into, I am thinking about other event scheduling things that we may be able to use for our, I was thinking about myself and how we can schedule alliance events and get people to sign up for those.
Right. So a lot of the information here can be kind of cross used in different situations or in different ways. So
Yeah, I see that someone just said my organization doesn't charge admission. Is there any smart way to take a reservation instead of being straight open? And I would say that I know for at least the Google form, you could totally use that, Christina's idea.
yes.
With
Yeah, the Google form would definitely work, particularly since we weren't collecting money anyway. Through that Google form, it is a way to pretty easily, set someone, have them request a certain time. And like when you set up the Google form, you can put like parameters. Not everybody reads them, but you can say, we are generally available on Saturdays from 10 to 4, but if you have another time that you'd like to come, write that down and we'll see if we can accommodate. And then, you have a little bit of a back and forth potentially through email to set up the time, but that's the best way to, kind of set that time with the individual customer. And then again, send them a reminder email the day before.
And you can use Fair Harbor with no fee. It's just maybe if you're never going to have a fee, maybe a little bit of overkill for the setup, but it can be used that way. So if you wanted it to have that spiffy pop up on your website, you can put events in for $0. And I guess they don't make any money and you don't make any money, but works for you at your organization. And then there's a few other people who've mentioned we don't charge admission. We have a sponsor who covers, and then we have a part-time person in our building volunteer network. We do not charge admission. We are currently open Tuesday through Thursday from 11 to 5. What are your thoughts about being open on the weekends versus weekdays? And also thoughts about being open by appointment only?
I would say in terms of weekends versus weekdays, you're going to get different crowds for each one. And if you had to pick just 2 days to be open, I would pick one weekday and one weekend. So, the Wednesday, Sunday thing works, or maybe a Friday, Saturday thing works. But we tend to get, more retired people during the week and more families on the weekends. So, and that changes a little bit during summer hours, obviously, but I think it's important to have kind of both of those opportunities available for people.
And I was like, when we added the Wednesday daytime tours, I was surprised in the summer. We got a lot of moms or grandparents bringing kids that maybe people assumed they would have used the weekend hours, but they're using the weekend hours to visit places that may be a little further afield or all day type of events rather than a 45-minute event. So the Wednesdays last summer were extremely popular. And that was, kind of the reason I wanted to try it. I'm still interested in trying, a Thursday night kind of tour that people who didn't want to give away their weekend again, but work could come in the evenings. So I think for me, once we got off this open on Sundays from 2 to 5 rigidity, and we can start experimenting using these other ways for people to book tours, it's letting us try stuff. And if it catches on and people like it, we can stick with it. And if they don't, no big deal. We'll just take the tours off. I don't have to have people at the site unless people sign up. So it's not a huge drain on our energy and to be doing things that no one books.
It seems like there should be a way around buying a ticket if you're not, even if you don't have tickets. I don't see why you couldn't do a $25 donation gets you up to 10 people on a guided tour. I mean, I think there should be a ways getting around not charging admission, but still making money. I mean, don't you people want to make money? I would think you'd want to make money. So I would think there's a way you could get around that by saying for a $25 donation, we'll do a tour for up to 12 people or something like that for free.
Well, and I'm just going to add to that, because that is something I always think about, and it's a conversation we've had, is does our low ticket price of $5 for an hour tour devalue what we are doing? And do people think, well, it must not be very good since it's so cheap, or it must not be good because it's free, when now movies cost a lot more than $5? And I don't know the answer to that. It's just food for thought. That it's something that I kind of wrestle with, is what does the price of admission say about how we feel about the product we're putting out? So
Right, that is always something to be considering.
okay, so my eyes are getting tired here. Okay, so then someone said, this has been very informative. Many times when we are open for tours, we never get anyone coming in for open hours, and it sort of wastes volunteer times when there's nothing for them to do. I totally agree. And then someone, Betsy said, I think you may be able to use Square to take reservations without having folks pay, because she visited the Kurt Vonnegut Museum in Indianapolis last summer, and they have you pre-schedule a tour on Square, but you pay on site instead of prepaying. So as far as Square is concerned, that's a $0 transaction. Yeah, that would be how Fair Harbor would work too. You could say pay on site and then just never charge them. And then the next comment is, it's worth the price of admission. And then I like having visitors pre-register. It makes them pay attention to your hours and offerings.
All right. Any other last questions or anything else that Betsy needs to talk about, as we're almost at 8 o'clock?
I think the only thing I need to say is that we will be posting the recording online in a couple of days, give or take. And we will send out that link to everyone who pre-registered, including those of you who are here. And yeah, consider joining us for the annual meeting, which will have many days worth of presentations just as awesome as this one. September 30th and October 1st, live in person at the West Conference Center just north of Columbus.
Okay. And I have one last question, just because I like to kind of keep track of outreach things. Is there anybody that has a watch party and you have more than one person on your screen, or more than one person who's watching from your one little screen box?
We know John.
John, how many people are there? I can't hear you.
I have 3 in here.
Okay. All right. All right.